Oil prices have topped $100, hitting their highest in almost 4 years as the escalating war in Iran fuels fears of tighter supply and prolonged disruptions to shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. We've got Brent moving at $108 per barrel, WTI at $109. The U.S. President Donald Trump has dismissed the spike, calling it a small price to pay to remove what he describes as the threat of Iran's nuclear program. Brent was near the $70 level just last week, and analysts have warned that the war could leave consumers and businesses worldwide facing weeks or even months of higher fuel prices, even if the conflict ends quickly. For more, we're joined by Vikas Dwivedi, global energy strategist at Macquarie. Vikas, thanks for joining us today. So oil surging above $100 a barrel, at one point even, I think, $110, $111. I mean, how significant is this threshold psychologically and economically for global markets?
It's very significant. Over 100 is a key, milestone, a negative one, right, for the consumer sentiment and for actual economics, right? It will start to eat into people's discretionary spending. We're already seeing $5 prices in the U.S. And we think it's likely to keep going unless this conflict is resolved right away, right? So, now we've been of the view that the oil market will break in days, not in weeks and months.
Okay, so you're saying that the oil market will break in days. I know you've noted the possibility of $150 a barrel. I think earlier in the report you said that global markets can handle, the strait being shut for a week or two, but the price would rapidly escalate after a third week. Before the markets break, I mean, could we see, a dramatic escalation, especially as we're seeing the headlines come out of the U.S., boots on the ground. You've got the UAE, Kuwait joining Iraq, cutting oil production, the appointment of new successor who is seen to carry on Iran's stance. I mean, could all this push an escalation before the oil markets can break?
Well, we think this is part of what will cause it to break, because if you're an oil buyer, right, you're a petroleum refining company, you're already scrambling. You're thinking about your inventory levels. You're thinking about where your cargoes are, where they may end up. So it's already started. You're cutting runs, right, in some places. Nothing dramatic yet, but that's still, this is just day 10, right? So we think, if we're having the same conversation in another 5-7 days, there will be substantial run cuts, and oil will likely be much higher. We noted in our research that $150 per barrel is very attainable unless you have an amazingly fast resolution and things can go back to normal, especially in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, and the U.S. president, he suggested that the prices will drop rapidly once the Iranian nuclear threat is neutralized. Is this a realistic assessment?
It could be realistic if the threat is neutralized and there's some resolution in the next few days. If it's more like, 2 weeks, too much damage will have been done, meaning a lot of countries will have already shut in production because they ran out of storage. And some refiners may actually have to shut down completely instead of just cutting runs. The ships, right, the big crude carrying ships may be scattered all over the world. Not many will just hang out near the Strait of Hormuz waiting for the green light. So these are real challenges to getting everything back to normal, even when resolution has been struck.
I want to just draw your attention to this Asia region. We're seeing in markets today, the Nikkei, Kospi plunging really. Import-dependent Asia, including China, I mean, really feeling that pressure. I mean, how do you see this disruption affecting inflation as well as energy security here?
Yeah, I think look, if we get to we're already getting close, right? 120 oil with, and this is the thing we haven't discussed yet, but massive refining margins on top, right? So instead of, sort of $70 crude and $25 refining margins, if you end up with $120 crude and $50 refining margins, which we think is already underway, the entire complex will be so much more expensive that, any realistic gauge of inflation would start to account for that, right? The numbers would get very extreme quickly. And look, if we aren't getting a resolution, and you and I are having the same discussion in 2 more weeks, then 150 crude is very much attainable, and the everything I just said becomes even worse.
All right. Vikas, appreciate your time breaking this down for us today. Vikas Dwivedi, the global energy strategist at Macquarie.